The hospital room smelled of disinfectant and something else, something final. Father lay propped against white pillows, his breathing shallow but steady. The machines beeped in rhythm with his heartbeat, a metronome counting down his last days. Outside the window, autumn leaves drifted past, indifferent to the drama unfolding inside. We stood in a semicircle around his bed. 3 sons, 3 different lives, 3 different expectations. Marcus, the eldest, wore his usual suit, navy blue, perfectly pressed. He'd come straight from the office, as always. His phone buzzed constantly in his pocket, but for once, he didn't reach for it. His jaw was tight, his eyes fixed on Father's face as if memorizing every line. Daniel, the middle son, leaned against the wall near the door. Casual clothes, crossed arms, that familiar expression of detached observation. He'd flown in from Seattle that morning, leaving his startup in the hands of his co-founder. He hadn't been home in 3 years. And then there was me, the youngest, the one who'd never left, the one who'd stayed in this small town, helping Mother with groceries, mowing Father's lawn every Saturday, showing up for Sunday dinners. Even when my brothers had better things to do. The nurse adjusted Father's fore and whispered something to Mother, who nodded silently. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her hands twisted together in her lap. She'd been here every day for 2 weeks, sleeping in the chair by his bed, refusing to go home. The doctor says we should all say what we need to say, Marcus announced, breaking the heavy silence. His voice had that executive tone, commanding, efficient. While he's still lucid. Daniel shifted his weight. Does he even know we're here? As if in answer, Father's eyes opened. Slowly, deliberately. They moved across each of our faces, lingering, assessing. Then his hand, thin now, the wedding ring loose on his finger, lifted slightly from the blanket. His lips moved. We all leaned in. Bring. His voice was barely a whisper, rough with illness. Bring the youngest. The room froze. Marcus's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Daniel's arms tightened across his chest. Mother looked from Father to me, her face unreadable. Dad, we're all here, Marcus said carefully. All 3 of us. Father's head moved just slightly back and forth. No. Bring the youngest. Alone. The words hung in the air like smoke. I felt my brothers' eyes on me. The weight of their stares. The unspoken questions. The beginning of something that would later become suspicion, then anger, then something worse. I'll wait outside, Daniel said abruptly, pushing off from the wall. Marcus stood frozen for another moment before nodding curtly. Mother, we should give them privacy. But Mother didn't move immediately. She looked at Father, then at me. Her hand reached out and touched mine just briefly, a fleeting pressure before she rose and followed my brothers out. The door clicked shut. Suddenly the room felt enormous and impossibly small at the same time. Just me and the man who'd raised me, taught me to ride a bike, sat through my terrible piano recitals, walked me through my first heartbreak. The man who was dying. I pulled the chair closer to his bed and sat down. My hands were shaking. I didn't know if I should speak first or wait. If I should ask what he wanted to say or just listen. Father's hand moved again, reaching toward me. I took it carefully. His skin was paper thin, cool to the touch. But his grip was surprisingly firm. They're angry, he whispered. I can feel it through the walls. They're scared, I corrected gently. We all are. His eyes met mine, still sharp, still the same blue I remembered from childhood. No, you're not scared. You never were. That's why I called you. I wanted to protest. To tell him I was terrified. That I didn't understand what was happening. That I didn't want to be singled out. Didn't want to be the cause of whatever tension was building between my brothers. But something in his gaze stopped me. There are things. He paused, gathering strength. Things I need you to know. Things I can't tell them. Not yet. Maybe not ever. My throat tightened. Dad, you don't have to. Listen. The word came out sharp, almost like the old him, the one who'd commanded respect without raising his voice. Listen to me now. While I still can say it. So I listened. Outside the door, I could hear muffled voices. Marcus on his phone despite everything, probably checking in with the office. Daniel's laugh, that bitter, cynical sound that had become his trademark. Mother's footsteps pacing back and forth. Inside, Father spoke. He told me about the business he'd built, the choices he'd made, the mistakes he'd hidden. He told me about money, where it came from, where it went, where it should have gone but didn't. He told me about regrets that kept him awake at night and decisions that haunted him. He told me things that changed everything I thought I knew about our family. And with each word, I felt the weight of responsibility settling on my shoulders like a heavy coat. This wasn't an honor. This wasn't favoritism. This was a burden he couldn't bear to place on anyone else except me. The house, he said, his voice fading. The house needs someone who understands. Not what it's worth, but what it means. I squeezed his hand. I understand. Your mother. He coughed, a rattling sound that made me reach for the water cup. He waved it away. She'll need you. More than she'll admit. More than the others will understand. I'll be here. The papers. His eyes drifted toward the nightstand. In the drawer. Everything's there. My lawyer has copies. But I wanted you to see them first. Before the reading. Before they. He didn't finish. He didn't need to. Before they turn on you. We sat in silence for a while. His breathing evened out, and I thought he might be falling asleep. But then his hand tightened on mine one more time. I'm proud of you, he whispered. I never said it enough. But I am. You stayed. When staying was harder than leaving. You stayed. My vision blurred. Dad, let them in now. Before they think. Before they wonder. I nodded, unable to speak. I stood slowly, carefully laying his hand back on the blanket. At the door, I paused and looked back. He was watching me. And in his eyes, I saw something that terrified me more than his illness. More than his impending death. I saw goodbye. I opened the door. Marcus and Daniel stood in the hallway, conversations dying mid-sentence. Mother sat in a chair against the wall, her rosary beads moving through her fingers. You can go back in, I said quietly. What did he say? Marcus's question was immediate, sharp. He wanted to tell me he loves me. It wasn't a lie. But it wasn't the whole truth either. Daniel searched my face, his expression unreadable. That's it? That's all? That's all. But we all knew standing in that sterile hallway with its flickering fluorescent lights and faded motivational posters that something had shifted. Something had been set in motion that couldn't be stopped. Father had chosen. And in choosing, he'd changed everything. Marcus brushed past me without another word, Daniel following. Mother rose slowly, pausing to touch my cheek. You're a good son, she whispered. Then she too disappeared into the room, and I was alone in the hallway. Through the small window in the door, I could see my family gathered around Father's bed. From the outside, we looked like any other family, saying goodbye to a dying patriarch. United, grieving together. But I knew better. I knew what was coming. The door closed, and with it, the last moment of peace. Our family would know for a very long time. None of us knew then that this moment, this single decision to call only me, would be the spark that would either destroy us or save us. We just knew that nothing would ever be the same again. Father died 3 days later. It happened at dawn, that quiet hour when the world holds its breath between night and morning. Mother was there. The nurses were there. But none of us, his sons, made it in time. Marcus got the call first. Then Daniel. Then me. By the time we arrived, Father was already gone. The machines were silent. The bed was empty except for carefully folded sheets. And Mother sat in that same chair she'd occupied for weeks, staring at nothing. He went peacefully, the nurse told us. No pain. He just stopped. I wanted to ask if he'd said anything. If he'd called for any of us. If he'd whispered some final truth that would make sense of everything. But the words stuck in my throat. Marcus took charge immediately. Funeral arrangements. Notifications. Paperwork. He moved through the tasks with mechanical efficiency, his grief locked away somewhere I couldn't see. Daniel stood at the window, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Beautiful and terrible at the same time. And I sat next to Mother, holding her hand, feeling the tremors of her silent crying. The funeral was scheduled for Saturday. 4 days away. 4 days of relatives arriving, casseroles appearing on doorsteps, hushed conversations in corners. 4 days of people saying things like he's in a better place and at least he's not suffering anymore. 4 days of my brothers watching me. It started small. Glances that lasted a moment too long. Questions that seemed innocent but weren't. So what did Dad really talk to you about? Daniel asked on Tuesday, standing in the kitchen while Mother napped upstairs. I told you. He said he loved me. For 20 minutes, we talked about memories, family, the usual stuff. Marcus appeared in the doorway, coffee in hand. Did he mention the will? No. The business? No. The house? I met his gaze steadily. He mentioned the house. He said it meant something. That's all. Something flickered across Marcus's face. That's interesting, because his lawyer called me this morning. The will reading is scheduled for Monday. And apparently, he paused, letting the silence stretch. There are some surprises. My stomach tightened. What kind of surprises? The kind that make me wonder what you two really talked about. Daniel set down his glass with more force than necessary. Come on, Marcus. You can't seriously think. I don't think anything. I'm just observing facts. Dad singles out our little brother for a private conversation. 3 days later, he's dead. Now the lawyer is being mysterious about the will. You don't find that suspicious? I find it grief, I said quietly. That's what I find it. Marcus smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Maybe. Or maybe Dad told you something he should have told all of us. He left the kitchen. Daniel followed after giving me a look. I couldn't quite read sympathy mixed with doubt. I stood alone in Mother's kitchen, surrounded by sympathy flowers and casserole dishes, and felt the walls closing in. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying that conversation with Father, trying to remember every word. The papers in the nightstand. The house. Your mother will need you. At 2 in the morning, I gave up and went downstairs. The house was dark except for a lamp in the living room. Mother sat in Father's chair, holding his reading glasses. Can't sleep either? I asked softly. She looked up, her face older than I'd ever seen it. I keep expecting him to walk through that door, complaining about the hospital food, making jokes about the nurses. I sat on the couch across from her. Me too. Your brothers think he told you secrets. It wasn't a question. He told me things, but not secrets. Not the way they think. Mother turned the glasses over in her hands. Your father loved all 3 of you, but he understood you differently. Marcus wanted his approval. Daniel wanted his freedom. But you, she smiled sadly. You just wanted to be here. Is that why he chose me? He didn't choose you. He trusted you. There's a difference. Before I could ask what she meant, footsteps creaked on the stairs. Daniel appeared, disheveled from sleep. Oh, I didn't know anyone was up. Couldn't sleep, Mother said, rising slowly. I should try again. Big day tomorrow with the viewing. She kissed both our foreheads and headed upstairs, leaving me and Daniel in the lamplight. He sat where Mother had been, in Father's chair. It looked wrong on him. I don't think you're lying, he said abruptly. For what it's worth. Marcus is always looking for angles. But I don't think you're hiding anything. Thanks. But something happened in that room. Something that Dad thought was important enough to exclude us. And I need to know what it was. I chose my words carefully. He talked about responsibility. About taking care of things. That's all. Things like what? Like Mother. Like the house. Like making sure the family stays together. Daniel laughed bitterly. Stays together? Look at us. Marcus is already planning how to liquidate Dad's assets. I'm going back to Seattle the day after the funeral. And you're sitting here pretending everything's fine. We're not together. We never were. Maybe that's what he was worried about. Or maybe he knew exactly what would happen. Maybe he wanted to see if we'd tear ourselves apart over whatever he left behind. The accusation hung between us. You really think that? I asked. You really think Dad would manipulate us from beyond the grave? Daniel stood, running his hands through his hair. I don't know what to think anymore. I just know that nothing feels right. The timing, the secrecy, the way Marcus is acting, the way you're acting. How am I acting? Like you're carrying something heavy. Like you know something terrible and you're trying to protect us from it. He was closer to the truth than he realized. Get some sleep, Daniel. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded and headed back upstairs. I stayed in the living room until dawn, watching the shadows change shape as the sun rose. Thinking about Father's words. About the papers in the nightstand drawer that I'd read but not understood. About the lawyer's call that Marcus mentioned. About the will reading on Monday that would change everything. The viewing was Friday. The church was packed. Father had been a pillar of the community, business owner, volunteer, church deacon. People lined up to pay respects, sharing stories about his generosity, his wisdom, his dry sense of humor. Marcus greeted everyone with practiced grace. Daniel stood near the back, uncomfortable in his suit. And I stayed close to Mother, watching her accept condolences with quiet dignity. At one point, Father's lawyer appeared. Gerald Hayes, a man who'd known our family for 30 years. He approached Marcus first, speaking in low tones. Then Daniel. Then, finally, me. I need to speak with you, he said quietly. After the funeral. Before the reading. Why? Because your father left specific instructions. About you. About what you're supposed to know first. My brothers were watching. I could feel their eyes. Okay, I whispered. Gerald nodded and moved away. leaving me with the weight of more secrets I didn't want. The funeral itself was a blur. Hymns and eulogies. The priest talking about eternal rest and resurrection. Mother's silent tears. The drive to the cemetery. The coffin being lowered into the ground. While a cold wind scattered leaves across the graves. And through it all, my brothers watching me with questions in their eyes. At the reception afterward, Marcus cornered me in the hallway. What did Gerald want? To offer condolences. Try again. I met his stare. Back off, Marcus. Not until you tell me what's going on. Not until you stop treating us like we're outsiders in our own family. You made yourself an outsider. Both of you did. You left. You chose careers over family. You missed birthdays and holidays and Sunday dinners. You weren't here. The words came out harder than I intended, carrying years of resentment I didn't know I'd been holding. Marcus's face went cold. So this is about punishment? Dad rewards you for staying and punishes us for having ambitions? It's not about rewards or punishment. It's about being present. No. Marcus stepped closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. It's about whatever you're hiding. And I promise you, when that will is read on Monday, if I find out you manipulated Dad or influenced him or took advantage. You'll what? I kept my voice level. Disown me? Contest the will? Tear this family apart? If I have to. He walked away, leaving me shaking with anger and fear. Daniel found me later, standing alone on the back porch. He doesn't mean it, Daniel said. He's grieving. We all are. He means every word. Maybe. But that doesn't make him right. Daniel leaned against the railing. For what it's worth, I believe you. I believe Dad had his reasons. I just wish I understood them. You will. Soon. Monday. We stood in silence, watching the last guests leave. Mother appeared in the doorway, exhausted. Come inside, boys. It's getting cold. We followed her in, and I couldn't shake the feeling that this was the last moment of calm before everything exploded. The will reading was scheduled for 10 o'clock Monday morning. 48 hours away. 48 hours until my brothers learned the truth. 48 hours until I learned whether Father's faith in me was justified or whether I'd been set up to fail. I didn't sleep that night either. I kept thinking about Father's last words. About the responsibility he'd placed on my shoulders. About the choice he'd made and what it would cost. And I wondered if love was always this heavy. If being chosen always felt like drowning. Gerald Hayes's law office occupied the second floor of a brick building on Main Street, above a coffee shop that smelled eternally of cinnamon and espresso. I'd been there once before, years ago, when Father had me witness some paperwork I didn't understand. Now I understood too much. The waiting room was small and uncomfortable. Victorian furniture that looked expensive but felt like sitting on wooden planks. Legal books lined the walls, thick volumes with gold lettering that nobody probably ever read. Marcus arrived first, precisely at 9:45. Always early, always prepared. He wore his power suit, the one he saved for important meetings. His briefcase clicked open and shut as he reviewed documents I couldn't see. Daniel slouched in 15 minutes later, carrying coffee from downstairs and looking like he hadn't slept. He nodded at me but didn't sit. Instead, he paced the small space like a caged animal. Mother was last. She moved slowly, leaning on her cane more than usual. The funeral had aged her. Or maybe it was everything after. Gerald's secretary, a woman named Margaret who'd worked there longer than I'd been alive, smiled sympathetically and gestured toward the inner office. Mr. Hayes is ready for you now. The conference room was bigger than the waiting area but just as uncomfortable. A long mahogany table dominated the space, surrounded by leather chairs that creaked when you sat. Gerald stood at the head, a manila folder in front of him. Thank you all for coming, he began, then seemed to realize how ridiculous that sounded. Where else would we be? Please, sit. We arranged ourselves with careful distance. Marcus at one end, Daniel across from me, Mother beside me, her hand finding mine under the table. Gerald opened the folder. Your father updated his will 6 months ago. He was very specific about his wishes. Very deliberate. Marcus leaned forward. Can we skip the preamble and get to the content? Marcus, Mother said softly. A warning. Gerald cleared his throat and began reading. The first part was standard. Charitable donations. Gifts to the church. Small bequests to longtime employees. Nothing controversial. Then he got to the business. To my eldest son, Marcus, I leave controlling interest in Hayes Manufacturing, with the stipulation that Daniel be offered the position of Chief Innovation Officer should he choose to return. Wait, Daniel interrupted. Return? I have my own company," Gerald continued as if he hadn't spoken, "and that neither brother may sell their shares without the approval of the other for a period of 10 years. Marcus's face went rigid. "He's forcing us to work together?" "He's ensuring the business stays in the family," Gerald replied evenly. "Same thing." Marcus sat back, jaw clenched. "Continue." "The house." This was where it would get complicated. "To my youngest son," Gerald paused, glancing at me. "I leave the family home at 47 Maple Street, along with its contents, to be maintained as a residence for my wife, Margaret Ann Hayes, for the remainder of her life. Upon her passing, the property passes fully to my youngest son." The room went silent, then exploded. "The entire house?" Daniel's voice cracked. "Just like that?" "This is insane," Marcus said flatly. "Dad wouldn't, he couldn't." "There's more," Gerald said. Of course there was more. "I also leave to my youngest son the responsibility of executor of my estate, with full authority to make decisions regarding the distribution of personal property and the management of." Marcus stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "No, absolutely not." "Marcus, please sit down," Mother said. "Mother, you can't possibly agree with this. He's giving everything to him." Marcus pointed at me like I was a stranger. "The house. Executor authority. While Daniel and I get a business we'll probably destroy trying to run together, and some vague promise of what? Equal consideration?" "That's not what the will says," Gerald interjected. "Then what does it say?" Daniel demanded. "Because from where I'm sitting, Dad just told us exactly which son he loved most." "It's not about love," I said quietly. "Then what is it about?" Marcus wheeled on me. "Because I'd really love to hear you explain how this is fair. How you deserve the house we all grew up in. How you get to decide what happens to Dad's things, while we're relegated to being business partners in a company that barely breaks even anymore." "The business is quite profitable, actually," Gerald noted. "Not the point." Marcus's control was slipping. I'd never seen him like this, unraveled, raw. "The point is that our father, in his final act, decided to divide this family right down the middle." "He didn't divide anything," Mother said, her voice stronger than I'd heard it in days. "He made provisions." "That's what people do. They plan for the future." "By excluding us?" Daniel shook his head. "By giving him everything?" "He didn't give me everything," I protested. "He gave me responsibility. He gave you both a business worth." "We don't want the business," Daniel shouted. "I have a life in Seattle. Marcus has a life in the city. Neither of us wants to run Dad's old factory." "Then sell it," I said. "In 10 years." "10 years?" Marcus laughed bitterly. "You expect us to put our lives on hold for 10 years? Because Dad had some fantasy about keeping us tied together?" Gerald cleared his throat. "There's one more provision." We all turned to stare at him. "Your father established a trust, $200,000, to be divided equally among the three of you, with the stipulation that it be used for, and I quote, "purposes that bring joy rather than obligation." 200,000, Marcus repeated. "Split 3 ways." "That's what we're worth to him." 66,000 each. "It's not about worth," I said again, but nobody was listening. Daniel had gone pale. "Did he say anything else? In his notes? In his instructions?" Gerald hesitated. "He left letters for each of you." He produced 3 envelopes from the folder, cream-colored, Father's handwriting on each. "Marcus, Daniel, and my name." Marcus snatched his and tore it open immediately. His eyes scanned the page, and with each line, his expression grew darker. Daniel opened his more slowly, reading with the intensity of someone looking for hidden meanings. I held mine, unopened. I didn't need to read it. I already knew what it said. Father had told me that night in the hospital. These letters were just his way of explaining to my brothers what he couldn't say while alive. Marcus read aloud, his voice shaking. "You have always been driven, successful, everything I hoped you'd become. But success came at a cost. You stopped seeing family as anything other than obligation. The business is yours because I know you'll make it thrive. But I hope you'll also learn what I learned too late, that money means nothing if you have no one to share it with." He crumpled the letter. Sanctimonious garbage. Daniel's hands trembled as he read his. He didn't share it aloud, but his eyes filled with tears. Whatever Father had written, it had hit its mark. Finally, they both looked at me. "Well?" Marcus demanded. "What does yours say? What final wisdom did Dad impart to his favorite son?" I opened it slowly. The letter was longer than theirs, 3 pages. But the first paragraph told me everything. "Son, by the time you read this, you'll know that I've placed a burden on you. An unfair one, Perhaps. But you're the only one strong enough to carry it. The house isn't a gift, it's a trust. Your mother needs stability, and you've always provided that. Your brothers need something to tie them back to this place, this family, and the business, frustrating as it may be, will do that. I looked up. Marcus and Daniel were watching me with expressions I couldn't quite read. Anger, hurt, confusion. You'll be tempted to explain, I continued. To justify. To make them understand. Don't let them be angry. Let them blame you. Because eventually, they'll see what I saw, that some gifts are hidden, that some burdens are blessings. That family isn't about what you inherit, it's about what you choose to keep. The silence that followed was suffocating. Then Marcus spoke, his voice cold and measured. So that's it. We're supposed to just accept this. Accept that you get everything while we get scraps and platitudes. The business is worth over $5 million, Gerald said. Hardly scraps. A business we don't want, can't sell, are forced to run together. Marcus looked at Daniel. You really want to give up your startup to manage factory production schedules? No, Daniel admitted. But I also don't want to contest Dad's will. I don't want to fight. Then what do you want? Daniel looked at me. I want to understand why. I want to know what you said to him that night. What you promised. What deal you made. There was no deal. Bullshit. Marcus's profanity startled everyone. He never cursed. People don't rewrite their wills without reason. Dad had this planned for 6 months. Which means 6 months ago, something changed. Something convinced him to favor you over us. And I want to know what it was. Mother's hand tightened on mine. Stop this. All of you. Your father is barely in the ground. And you're already tearing each other apart. He tore us apart, Marcus said. Not us. Him. With this will. With these choices. With whatever poison he whispered to our little brother. That turned him into the golden child. I never wanted this, I said, my voice cracking. I never asked for any of it. But you got it anyway. Marcus gathered his things, shoving the letter in his briefcase. Enjoy the house. Enjoy being Mom's caretaker. Enjoy your inheritance. Daniel and I will figure out what to do with the business on our own. Marcus' mother started. I need air. I need to think. I need to be anywhere but here. He left. The door slammed behind him, rattling the law books on the shelves. Daniel stood more slowly. I don't hate you, he said to me. But I don't understand you either. And until I do. He shrugged helplessly. I don't know what we are anymore. He left too. Quieter. But just as final. I sat with Mother and Gerald in the suddenly enormous room. That went well, I said, and almost laughed, except I was too close to crying. Gerald began gathering papers. It's not uncommon. Families often struggle with wills. Give them time. How much time? Days? Weeks? Years? However long it takes. Mother squeezed my hand. Your father knew this would be hard. That's why he chose you. Because you're strong enough to weather it. I don't feel strong. No one ever does. She stood slowly, leaning on her cane. Take me home, dear. I'm tired. Home. The house that was now legally mine. The house where I'd have to live with Mother while my brothers resented us both. The house that had somehow become a battleground instead of a sanctuary. We drove in silence. Mother stared out the window, and I focused on the road. When we pulled into the driveway, Marcus's car was already gone. He'd taken his things from the guest room while we were at the lawyer's office. Daniel's rental car sat in the driveway, but as we entered the house, we heard him on the phone upstairs, making arrangements, changing his flight, leaving early. Mother went to her room. I stood in the foyer, my foyer now, and looked at the family photos lining the wall. 3 boys at various ages, graduation pictures, holiday gatherings, vacations, all of us smiling, all of us together. I wondered if we'd ever smile like that again. Upstairs, Daniel's footsteps moved back and forth, packing, preparing to flee. And somewhere in the city, Marcus was probably in a bar or his office, or anywhere that wasn't here, planning his next move, deciding whether to accept Father's terms or fight them in court. Father had said to let them be angry, so I let them. But God, it hurt. The house felt different that night. Emptier. The silence wasn't peaceful, it was accusatory. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like judgment. Every shadow looked like disappointment. I made dinner for Mother and myself. Soup and bread. We ate at the kitchen table without speaking. On the other side of the house, I could hear Daniel moving around, drawers opening and closing. At 8 o'clock, he came downstairs with his suitcase. Mother looked up. You're leaving tonight? Red-eye flight. Better to just. He gestured vaguely. Better to go. She rose and embraced him. He held her tight, and I saw him squeeze his eyes shut. I love you, Mom, this isn't about you. I know. He looked at me over her shoulder. Our eyes met. I tried to find the right words, something that would bridge the gap that had opened between us, some way to make him understand. But before I could speak, he was gone. The front door opened and closed. His car started. Tail lights disappeared down the street. Mother sat back down slowly. And then there were two. I can call them. Try to explain. No. She patted my hand. Your father was right. They need time, space, distance. They need to be angry somewhere else before they can understand what he was trying to do. What was he trying to do? Save you all from yourselves. From growing so far apart that you forget your brothers. She smiled sadly. Whether it works or not, that's up to you three. That night, I lay awake in my childhood bedroom now in my childhood house and thought about responsibility, about burden, about the difference between a gift and a curse. Father had given me the house, but in doing so, he'd cost me my brothers. And I didn't know if that was a price worth paying. Downstairs, the grandfather clock chimed midnight. In the silence that followed, I thought I heard Father's voice, distant and distorted by memory. Let them be angry. Let them blame you. I was trying, Dad. I was trying. But it was so much harder than you'd made it sound. 3 weeks passed like a slow bleed. Marcus didn't call. Daniel sent one text, made it back safely. Need some time. I replied, take all the time you need. He never responded. Mother and I fell into a routine. Breakfast at 7. Her physical therapy at 9. Grocery shopping on Wednesdays. Church on Sundays. We didn't talk about the war, the house, or my brothers. We just existed. Side by side. Two people sharing space and grief, and the ghost of the man who'd brought us together and torn us apart simultaneously. The house felt too big now. Rooms that had been filled with noise and life sat empty and silent. The guest rooms where my brothers had stayed remained untouched, beds made, as if they might return any moment. But they wouldn't. I knew they wouldn't. On a Thursday afternoon, while Mother napped upstairs, I finally did what I'd been avoiding for weeks. I went to Father's study. Nobody had touched it since he died. His reading glasses still sat on the desk. His coffee mug, the one that said "World's Best Dad," that I'd given him when I was 8, held pens and pencils. Papers were stacked in neat piles, everything organized the way he'd always kept it. I sat in his chair. It smelled like him, Old Spice and pipe tobacco, even though he'd quit smoking years ago. The nightstand. He'd mentioned the nightstand. I pulled open the drawer. Inside were the papers he'd referenced. Legal documents, financial statements. And underneath everything, a leather journal I'd never seen before. I lifted it carefully. The leather was worn smooth, the pages yellowed with age. Father's handwriting filled every line, small, precise, methodical. The first entry was dated 20 years ago. Marcus graduated today. Top of his class. I've never been prouder. He's going to do great things. Things I never could. Maybe that's what every father wants, to see his children surpass him. But I worry. He has my ambition but not my balance. He sees the destination but not the journey. I hope he learns before it's too late. What took me 40 years to understand, that success means nothing if you're alone at the top. I flipped forward. Daniel left for college today. The house feels empty without his music and his laughter and his constant questions about everything. He's going to change the world. I know it. He has vision and courage and that rare ability to see what doesn't exist yet and make it real. But he's running. From what? I'm not sure. From me? From this town? From himself? I hope he finds what he's looking for. I hope he realizes that sometimes the thing you're running from is the thing you need most. My hands shook as I turned more pages. Youngest started college today. Local. He said it was because of the scholarship, but I know better. He stayed because he thought we needed him. Maybe we do. Margaret has been struggling with her health. The house is too much for her. And I'm not getting any younger. But I worry I'm holding him back. That his loyalty is becoming a cage. I need to make sure somehow that staying was his choice, not his obligation. Page after page. Years of observations, worries, pride, love. And slowly, a pattern emerged. Father had been watching, planning, trying to figure out how to give each of us what we needed rather than what we wanted. I found the entry from 6 months ago, the one that must have triggered the will change. Had my annual physical today. Drive. Morrison found something. Could be nothing. Probably isn't. More tests next week. But sitting in that exam room, staring at the anatomical posters on the wall, I realized I've been a coward. I've been putting off the hard decisions because I didn't want to face them, didn't want to acknowledge my own mortality, didn't want to admit that my time to fix things is running out. I know what needs to happen. Marcus needs the business not because he wants it, but because he needs something to tie him to this place, to force him to slow down, to reconnect. Daniel needs the same. They need each other, even if they don't see it yet, even if they fight it. And my youngest, God, what I'm about to do to him. It's not fair. It's not kind. But it's necessary. He's the only one strong enough to hold the center, while the others orbit and rage and eventually I hope find their way back. Margaret needs stability. The house provides that. But it also provides a reason for the boys to return, to visit, to remember, to maintain connection. They're going to hate this. Hate me for doing it. Hate him for being chosen. But if I'm right, if I understand my sons, the way I think I do, eventually they'll see. They'll understand. They'll forgive. And if I'm wrong, God forgive me for the damage I'm about to do. I closed the journal and sat in the growing darkness of Father's study. He'd known they would be angry, known it would hurt, known it might destroy us, and he'd done it anyway, because he believed with the certainty of a dying man that it was the only way to save us. I was still sitting there when Mother found me an hour later. I thought I might find you here, she said softly, turning on the desk lamp. Did you know? I asked. About the journal? About his plans? I knew he was thinking, planning, worrying about you boys. She moved to the bookshelf, running her fingers along the spines. He showed me the journal once, asked if I thought he was crazy. What did you say? I said love always looks a little crazy from the outside. She pulled a book from the shelf, a photo album I recognized from childhood. She opened it to a page near the middle. 3 boys at the beach. Marcus, maybe 12. Building an elaborate sandcastle. Daniel, 9, destroying it with a stick. And me, 6, crying because they were fighting. You were always the peacemaker, Mother said. Even then, always trying to hold things together. Your father saw that. He knew that if anyone could weather this storm, it would be you. But what if I can't? What if they never forgive me? Never come back? Then your father was wrong, and we'll deal with that together. She closed the album. But I don't think he was wrong. I think he understood his sons better than they understand themselves. That night, I couldn't sleep again. I kept thinking about Father's words, about his plan, about the weight he'd placed on all of us. At 2 in the morning, I did something reckless. I called Marcus. It rang 4 times. I almost hung up. Then his voice, rough with sleep. Do you have any idea what time it is? I found Dad's journal. Silence. Marcus? What journal? The one he kept for 20 years. The one that explains everything. More silence. Then I'm listening. I told him everything. The entries about him, about Daniel, about me, about Father's diagnosis and his decision, and his hope that we'd eventually understand. When I finished, Marcus didn't speak for a long time. So this was all calculated, he finally said. Every bit of it. The will, the business restrictions, choosing you. It was all part of some grand design to force us back together. He was trying to help. By manipulating us? By creating a situation guaranteed to cause resentment and anger? By giving us a reason to stay connected when we'd spent years drifting apart. You don't get it. Marcus's voice was hard. You don't get to decide that for us. Neither did Dad. We're not chess pieces. We're not problems to be solved. I know that. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, you're defending a choice that hurt all of us. A choice that put you in an impossible position and us in a worse one. What do you want me to do? I asked. Do you want me to refuse the house? Give up executor duties? Pretend the will doesn't exist? I want you to acknowledge that this is fucked up. That Dad's grand plan was selfish and short-sighted and based on assumptions about who we are and what we need that might not be true anymore. Okay. I took a breath. It's fucked up. It's unfair. It's based on Dad's perception of us rather than reality. But it's also all we have. It's his last wish. His last attempt to keep us together. And maybe, just maybe, he saw something we don't. Marcus laughed bitterly. Always the optimist. Someone has to be. Another long silence. Send me photos of the journal entries, Marcus said finally. All of them. I want to see what he wrote about me. Okay. And I'll think about what you said. About Dad's intentions. About what he was trying to do. That's all I'm asking. Don't ask for more than that. Not yet. I'm still angry. Daniel's still angry. This doesn't fix anything. I know. But. He paused. But maybe it's a start. He hung up. I sat in the darkness of my room, phone in hand, feeling something that might have been hope. The next morning, I photographed every page of Father's journal. It took hours. Then I sent them to Marcus with a simple message: "This is who Dad was. Make of it what you will." I sent the same file to Daniel with, "When you're ready to read it, this might help." Daniel's response came 3 days later: "Read it. Processing. Not ready to talk yet, but thank you for sharing." Marcus didn't respond at all. But 2 weeks later, on a Saturday morning, his name appeared on my phone. "I've been thinking about the business," he said without preamble. "About what Dad wrote. About needing something to tie me here." Okay. I hate that he was right. I hate that I've been running on autopilot for years, chasing success without knowing why. I hate that it took his death and his manipulative will to make me see it. But he was right. And I need to figure out what to do about that. The business is yours. You can do whatever you want with it. It's not mine. It's ours. Mine and Daniel's. With restrictions designed to force collaboration. He paused. I called him yesterday. First time since the funeral. My heart jumped. And we talked for 3 hours. About the business. About Dad. About the journal entries, about how angry we both are and how lost we feel and how much we miss. He stopped. Miss what? Being brothers, being a family, being more than strangers who share DNA and resentment. I couldn't speak. We're not ready to come back yet, Marcus continued. Daniel has commitments in Seattle. I have things to wrap up here. But we're thinking, maybe Thanksgiving. Maybe we could all be there. At the house. With Mom. Like we used to. I'd like that. It doesn't fix everything. We're still processing. Still angry about how this happened. But maybe Dad's plan wasn't completely insane. Maybe not. I'll call you next week. About the business. About next steps. About figuring out how to make this work. Okay. And Marcus's voice softened slightly. Thank you for sharing the journal. For not giving up on us even when we gave up on you. You're my brothers. I don't know how to give up on you. After he hung up, I sat at the kitchen table with Mother and told her about the conversation. She smiled, the first real smile I'd seen since Father died. See? She said. I told you. Your father knew his sons. That afternoon, I went back to Father's study. I opened the journal to the last entry, the one written 3 days before he went to the hospital. If you're reading this, youngest, then I'm gone. And you're probably angry with me. Hurt. Confused about why I place this burden on you. But I need you to know something. You were never the favorite. You were the foundation. Marcus is the ambition. Daniel is the vision. But you're the heart. You're what holds this family together when everything else falls apart. The house isn't a reward. It's a responsibility. Your brothers will come back eventually. They'll be angry first. Maybe for months. Maybe for years. But they'll come back because you're there. Because Mom is there. Because real home is something they'll realize they can't live without. I'm asking you to carry more than your share. I'm asking you to be strong when they're weak, patient when they're angry, present when they're absent. It's not fair, but life rarely is. Your brothers will inherit money and business and the chance to build empires. You'll inherit something more important. You'll inherit the job of keeping them human, of reminding them that success means nothing without someone to share it with. I love you, son. All 3 of you. Equally. Completely. And if this plan works, if you're reading this, and your brothers are still in your life in any capacity, then I died knowing I did at least one thing right. Take care of your mother. Take care of the house. Take care of your brothers, even when they don't deserve it. Especially when they don't deserve it. And forgive an old man for trying to control things from beyond the grave. I only did it because I couldn't bear the thought of you 3 becoming strangers. With all my love, Dad. I closed the journal and placed it back in the drawer. Outside the window, autumn had given way to winter. The trees were bare. The sky was gray. But somewhere in that cold landscape, spring was waiting. Father had planted seeds. In his will. In his journal. In the impossible situation he'd created. Whether those seeds would grow, that was up to us. But for the first time since he died, I thought maybe, just maybe, they would. Thanksgiving arrived with the first snow. I stood at the kitchen window, watching fat flakes drift down and cover the lawn in white. Mother hummed behind me, preparing the turkey the way she'd done for 40 years. The house smelled like sage and cinnamon and all the comfort foods of childhood. Marcus's car pulled up first. I watched him sit there for a moment, engine running, staring at the house. This house that had been his home and was now legally mine. I wondered what he was thinking. If he'd changed his mind. If he'd turn around and leave. But then the engine cut off. The door opened. He stepped out into the snow. He looked older somehow. Tired. The last 2 months had worn on him the same way they'd worn on all of us. I met him at the door. We stood facing each other, and for a moment, Neither of us knew what to say. Then Marcus extended his hand. I looked at it, at the formal gesture that said so much about the distance still between us. I took his hand and pulled him into a hug instead. He went rigid. Then slowly, so slowly, his arms came up and wrapped around me. I missed you, I said. His voice was rough when he answered. Yeah, me too. Mother appeared, wiping her hands on her apron, and Marcus hugged her too. Longer, tighter. My boy, she whispered. My boy is home. Daniel arrived an hour later, pulling up in a rental car and trudging through the snow with his duffel bag. He looked thinner, more worn. Seattle hadn't been kind, or maybe the weight of the last months had just shown on him more than the rest of us. The reunion was quieter with him. A hug for Mother, a nod for Marcus, a hesitant embrace for me that felt like détente rather than reconciliation. But he was here. They were both here. That was enough. Dinner was scheduled for 3 o'clock, which gave us hours to fill with small talk and awkward silences. We avoided the heavy topics, talked about weather and work and Mother's new physical therapy exercises. Surface level conversations that kept us safe from the depths below. Until Marcus couldn't take it anymore. We should talk, he said, setting down his coffee cup. Really talk about everything. Mother looked between us. I can give you boys privacy. No, Daniel said. You should hear this too. You're part of this family. This affects you as much as anyone. We moved to the living room, the formal space Father had always reserved for important conversations. We arranged ourselves carefully, Mother in Father's chair, the three of us on the couch, and chairs like we were having a business meeting rather than a family discussion. Marcus went first. I've been seeing a therapist, he said bluntly. Started after the funeral. After reading Dad's journal. I needed help processing everything. This surprised me. Marcus didn't do therapy. Marcus didn't do vulnerability. What did you learn? I asked. That I'm angry. At Dad. At you. At myself. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. The therapist helped me understand that I'm not angry about the will. Not really. I'm angry because the will forced me to confront things I'd been avoiding for years. Like what? Like the fact that I've been chasing success to prove something to Dad. To prove I was worthy. To prove I was enough. He laughed bitterly. And the irony is that in trying to prove it, I missed what he actually valued. Presence, connection, being there. Daniel nodded slowly. I get that. I've been chasing too. Just in a different direction. Running from this town, from expectations, from being defined by where I came from. But the journal entries about me, they made me realize Dad saw through all of that. He knew I was running. He just didn't know how to make me stop. So the will was his way of making us stop, I said. Making us turn around and face what we'd been avoiding. Yeah. Marcus met my eyes. And you got caught in the middle. You got assigned the role of anchor. While Daniel and I played astronauts, floating further and further away. I chose that role, I said. Nobody forced me to stay. Didn't they? Daniel asked quietly. Think about it. Every time you talked about leaving, going to grad school, taking that job offer in Chicago, Mom got sick or Dad needed help with the business, or something happened that made you feel like you couldn't go, like you'd be abandoning them. I opened my mouth to protest, closed it, because he was right. You were trapped, Daniel continued. Just in a different kind of trap than us. We were trapped by ambition and escape. You were trapped by duty and love. And Dad. He shook his head. Dad used that. He knew you'd stay. Knew you'd accept the burden. Knew you'd hold the center while we spun out. He trusted me, I said, but the words felt hollow. He exploited you, Marcus corrected. Maybe with good intentions. Maybe out of love. But exploitation is still exploitation. Mother had been quiet through all of this. Now she spoke, her voice steady but sad. Your father wasn't perfect. He made mistakes. He could be manipulative when he thought he knew better than everyone else. But everything, every choice, every decision came from a place of love and fear. Fear of what? I asked. Fear of dying and leaving you boys scattered to the winds. Fear that you'd grow so far apart you'd become strangers. Fear that his legacy would be 3 successful sons who never spoke to each other. She looked at each of us in turn. He was terrified of that. Obsessed with it. The journal barely scratches the surface of how much it worried him. So he orchestrated this, Marcus said. The will, the restrictions, the inequity. All to force us back together. Yes. That's fucked up, Mom. She smiled sadly. Yes, it is. The honesty of it surprised me. I'd expected her to defend Father, to explain away his choices, to ask us to understand and forgive. Instead, she just acknowledged the truth. But here you all are, she continued. Sitting in his house, talking, being honest with each other, confronting hard truths. Would that have happened without the will? We were all silent. I don't know, Marcus finally admitted. Maybe, maybe not. Probably not, Daniel said. I'd planned to make the funeral and then ghost for another 5 years. That was my pattern. Show up for mandatory events, disappear immediately after. So maybe Dad's crazy plan worked, I said. In the most painful, complicated way possible. But it worked. Or it's working, Marcus corrected. We're not fixed. We're not magically a happy family again. We're just here, in the same room, talking. That's not the same as healed. No, Mother agreed. But it's a start. Daniel stood and walked to the window. Snow was still falling, heavier now. The world outside was white and quiet and pristine. I've been thinking about the business, he said, not turning around. About Dad's stipulation that we run it together. And I've been thinking maybe I could relocate. Move the startup here. Work remotely with my team. Be more present. Marcus and I exchanged glances. You'd give up Seattle? Marcus asked. I'd be giving up geography. Not my company. Not my ambitions. Daniel turned to face us. But maybe it's time to stop running. Maybe it's time to see if I can build something while staying rooted. While being close to family. That's a huge decision, I said. Yeah, but so is throwing away my relationship with my brothers. Because I'm too proud to admit Dad might have been right about some things. Marcus nodded slowly. I've been thinking along similar lines. Not moving here, my work is in the city. But maybe establishing a real presence in the business. Actually showing up. Actually partnering with Daniel instead of treating it like an obligation. What would that look like? I asked. Weekly calls, monthly visits, active participation in decisions instead of rubber stamping from a distance. He looked at Daniel. If you're serious about relocating, we could actually build something. Update the factory, modernize, maybe even expand. You want to grow Dad's business? I want to honor what he built while making it ours. Is that crazy? Probably, Daniel said. But I'm in. They both looked at me. What? I asked. You're the executor, Marcus said. You have authority over estate decisions, including the business. We'd need your approval to make major changes. You don't need my approval. You're the owners. But we need your blessing, Daniel clarified. We need to know you're okay with us actually taking this seriously. Instead of just fulfilling the minimum requirements of Dad's will. I looked between my brothers, at their faces, so familiar and so changed. At the hope and uncertainty and genuine desire to make this work. Yes, I said. You have my blessing. You have my support. Whatever you need. Marcus extended his hand to Daniel. They shook, formal and businesslike. Then they both looked at me and grinned. Group hug? Daniel suggested sarcastically. Absolutely not, Marcus said. But we did anyway. The three of us standing in Father's living room, arms around each other, holding on like we used to when we were kids. And the world was simpler and family meant everything. Mother watched from her chair, tears streaming down her face. Dinner was better than it had any right to be. The turkey was perfect. The conversation flowed easier. We told stories about Father, the good ones and the difficult ones. We laughed and remembered and grieved together in a way we hadn't been able to at the funeral. After dessert, Marcus pulled out his phone. I want to show you something, he said. Daniel and I have been working on it separately, but with the same idea. He opened a document and passed the phone around. It was a plan for the business, for the house, for the family. They proposed converting part of the factory into a community space, workshops, training programs, giving back to the town that had supported Father's business for decades. They proposed setting up a rotation for visiting Mother, weekly calls, monthly visits, making sure she was never alone. They proposed, and this made my throat tight, converting the guest rooms in the house into permanent spaces for them. Not full-time residences, but places they could come back to. Places that said, this is still my home too. We can't change the will, Marcus said. The house is yours. But maybe it can be ours too. In a different way. I'd like that, I managed to say. And one more thing. Daniel took the phone and scrolled to another page. We want to establish a fund in Dad's name for people in situations like yours, people who've put their lives on hold to care for family. Scholarships, grants, support systems. Why? Because what Dad did to you, even with good intentions, wasn't fair. You sacrificed opportunities, and we want to make sure others in similar situations have choices you didn't. I couldn't speak, could barely breathe. It's not an apology, Marcus said. Because we can't apologize for what Dad did. But it's an acknowledgement that you carried more than your share. That you deserved better. That we see you. Mother was crying openly now. Happy tears this time. Your father would be so proud, she whispered. Maybe, Daniel said. Or maybe he'd tell us we're overthinking it and to just pass that by. We laughed. Because it was true. Because Father had never been comfortable with emotional displays. Because humor was easier than drowning in feelings. But underneath the laughter was something real. Something solid. Something that felt like family. That night, after Marcus and Daniel had gone to their rooms and Mother had gone to bed, I found myself in Father's study again. The journal was still in the drawer where I'd left it. I pulled it out and opened to a random page. Watch the boys play football today. Marcus organizing plays like a general. Daniel running wild with creative chaos. Youngest keeping score and making sure nobody got hurt. 3 completely different people. How do I keep them connected when they're clearly meant for different paths? I flipped forward. Maybe I can't keep them connected. Maybe all I can do is give them reasons to reconnect. Plant seeds and hope they grow. Trust that the foundation we're building now will be strong enough to hold when I'm gone. I closed the journal and looked around the study. At the books Father had loved. The photos on the wall. The desk where he'd sat and worried and planned and hoped. You were right, Dad, I said to the empty room. It hurt like hell. And we're not fixed. But you were right. I thought I felt something then. A warmth. A presence. Probably just my imagination. Probably just grief and exhaustion and the emotional weight of the day. But it felt like approval. Like peace. Like goodbye. I left the study and went upstairs. Paused outside Marcus's room and heard him on a work call despite the late hour. Some things never change. Paused outside Daniel's room and heard music playing softly. He was probably designing something. His mind never stopped. Went to my own room, my childhood room in my inherited house, and lay down. Through the window, I could see snow still falling, covering everything in white, making the world new. Tomorrow, my brothers would leave again, back to their lives, their ambitions, their paths. But they'd come back for Christmas, for Mother's birthday, for Sunday dinners and business meetings, and all the small moments that make up a life. They'd come back because Father had given them a reason to. And maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything. I fell asleep thinking about family and forgiveness, and the strange ways love works itself out across distance and time and death. In the morning, the sun rose bright and clear. The snow sparkled. And downstairs, I heard voices. Mother laughing at something. Marcus said, Daniel arguing about the proper way to make coffee. The sound of home. The sound of family. The sound of everything Father had hoped for when he made his impossible choices. I got out of bed and went downstairs to join them. Whatever came next, whether we thrived or struggled or fell apart, again we'd face it together. Not because a wolf forced us to, but because we chose to. And in the end, choice was all that mattered. Father had understood that better than any of us. He'd given us chains disguised as gifts, obligations disguised as opportunities, and we'd transformed them into something real, something worth keeping, something called family.